Hey YouTube, so today we actually have a topic to discuss. Uh, it's a rather interesting topic um, because if you think about emotions, right? As said, I don't possess too many, and emotions maybe none whatsoever. But did you ever think about the problematic idea that the basic emotions have one idea that is basically circulating? And that lust for knowledge, or hunger for knowledge, or better said Wissenslust, is an emotion, not conjured up by the circulating idea of emotions. Meaning the one that is at least one, at least one idea of whatever circulates is then to co-vert with the a directions of that idea. Just happened to my keyboard. Interesting. Well, basically the A directions of emotions, what if they have a tendency to be out-negotiating the abyss idea in what is the mind, to conjure up and force onto whatever is the spirit emotion any sort of whatever you would or could describe as a wrong word, of course, as feeling. And therefore Wissenslust, meaning hunger for knowledge, is an emotion. We will classify it as interpreting a higher understandable or view pointing light when accessing or valuing knowledge at this verse. Meaning for example, understanding knowledge gives not satisfaction but grade of sense to where knowledge where no diverts from wisdom, at least. That's basically the emotion. So if you ever thought about that, let's come to a different topic. We made this slide yesterday, which is this one. Oh no, not this one. Oh, interesting. It's just stuff we work on. There it is. Table of invert. So something we worked on yesterday, which is this one. So 4, 1, 3, 3, 2, 0, 9, 1, or whatever the result, meaning the numbers resulting in 8, 2, 4, and the smileys resulting the first one in this. And the easy example for a table of inverts is the last one. Smileys here are more complex because they somehow hint at hidden emotion that are expressed in the well or not so above well known. And the easy example this is these three smileys. The calculating out smiley for the emotion, the lower one, to appear is this one here, the one with the hands. If you calculate this smiley out, you by these two uppercase smileys arrive at the lower one, and the eyes are not changing or interchanging with whatever is that brings forth the difference in why this smiley occurs. This is different from a table of true values, because even if a table of true values is somehow wrong, the idea nonetheless is somehow at least correct, I guess, or at least is based correct. Logic is one-part reasoning by any of what is cyclic vary, and thus this emotion to be counted out and calculated out results up at least then later in view of absolute staged virtue at this smiley. And language is of such nature, of course, that it is to show when conflict is not but, no, or all conflict, but potential for thus, or not but potential arising. And math is at least reasoning on basics. Meaning, when language is of such a matter that it is describing when conflict is interpretable or somehow manageable by language, math is the reasoning why language would not fit to that calculation. And art somehow defines the absolute nevertheless, oblivion, rest. Not important for this argument here. So question arising is when or why is what intention. By default, the conclusions availing to that from whatever the statement course that could or might be what will arrive at the question is then when question arising is not the when, but only the when followed, the why followed up from the when to what, at least, is intention, the frameline of an argument. Why an argument is deducted from premises in calculating out what is necessity. Because the why needs to be like this, an argument is deducted from whatever is the base fundament. And calculating out what is necessity is what will give rising to the question, meaning also availing when it will appear. As of such case that math is irrelevant for the question itself. It is not too necessary if you understand that a table of inverts is true values inverted, thus that they don't have too much of a correlation, at least in whatever would be a coherence, in a circular reasoning whatsoever, to each other, or somehow. Meaning, math is irrelevant for the question itself, language gives part to it, logic ought to be its causation. Funny. If math is irrelevant for the question itself, why would that make sense if a table of inverts would be actually something that exists? Well, wow. If this down here is somehow giving hint to a truth value, or a truth value by itself in a lower idea to a true value of truth value, at least. Or maybe that is just it. Meaning the question to arise and to formulate it is the frameline, but only if the why is deducted from premises and calculated out. Then math is irrelevant for whatever that is, and language is ought to be part of the question, and thus its causation by logic ought to be its causation itself. Intention must be clearly defined by a question and outducted by answering it. Meaning, if the question is arising, we cannot have intention as something that is not clearly defined, because this is what we're searching for, logically speaking, not logic used. And if we outduct it by answering it, it is because arising fallacies are not of nature of whatever math would put up as a relevant idea for the logic, but only for the language. Hence, question is an at least syntactical concept in this case of scenario. Then when is not of quoting logic, the why is. And thus, if why is the whatever intention is driving, and the when is only, or why is what, and then the intention, meaning the question arising as premises for what is the question, if of such case that it has been found, at least found maybe, or somehow, well, at least, sorry for the doubling. Question arising is of not of incoherence, but the following and or assumption. Meaning, as long as the question has arose in not of incoherence, meaning in an at least syntactical concept, then language now forms the baseline for arising at the question, or availing the question. The why is then what is converting on defined division absolute basic tainted interval. And thus the y is not of math. Then when is not of quoting logic, and the math needed to be calculated out to form the logic concept to arrive at what is the language and the syntactical concept. Thus, cyclic vary, deriving a true argument from hypothetical scenario, is not inductive reasoning and not even somehow reasoning, meaning inductive reasoning. As long as there is no further argument drawn from any deductive idea to premises or chance, the when is now of logic, causing up to an analytical debate of such idea that math would or will also, but not cannot be either basic or of true variation. Thus, the language needs to be factorizing a fabulous jeopardy. Meaning, the analytical debate of such an idea, where the table of inverts will correlate up to that math cannot be either the basics, and language will, by logic derived from outcounting whatever or outcalculating whatever is further argument to arrive at the frameline of the question, it needs to at least fabulously be not mentioned, but a jeopardy at somehow, and then fabulous jeopardy, or just previously mentioned. Thus, the table of inverts must include, as always, counting out math at all, a base logic plus one of its inherent logic ideas, and no syntactical concept of what is not known. Because if logic would be of inherence not, but a syntactical concept that is new, we would have math counted in later on, or even the language concept would at least be of logic math or art devised concept. Thus, all true values invert to what gives hint to them, and therefore only the anti-balancing questions that will formulate the result. Anti-balancing math is all but avert calculation. True values invert give hint, intention, outducted, only achievable by logic on base concepts. Thus, a question arising is not a syntactical concept, but question at least. Because language is outline or as well as space for table of inverts. Hence, if true values inverted are adhered to, whatever that out-questioned and answered question may be at any very some later or idea, then no linear calculus would and can give fundament, but math in nature of cyclic vary, meaning using almost a logic concept on math idea to calculate out. Thus, the logic concept needs to be of at least in not varied, meaning inherent concept to what is the argument. A table of inverts is in unvarious reasons great truth, its way to missing syntax, and therefore then outline at least. Thank you for listening.